Verses 26 to 33. He comforts them with the same comforts wherewith he himself was comforted. v. 25. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, you shall see even this will end well, for I believe God, and depend upon his word, that it shall be even as it was told me. He would not require them to give credit to that to which he did not himself give credit, and therefore solemnly professes that he believes it himself, and the belief of it makes him easy. I doubt not but it shall be as it was told me. Thus he staggers not at the promise of God through unbelief. Hath God spoken, and shall he not make it good? No doubt he can, no doubt he will, for he is not a man that he should lie. And shall it be as God hath said? Then be of good cheer, be of good courage. God is ever faithful, and therefore let all that have an interest in his promise be ever cheerful. If with God saying and doing are not two things, then with us believing and enjoying should not. He gives them a sign, telling them particularly what this tempestuous voyage would issue in. v. 26. We must be cast upon a certain island, and that will both break the ship and save the passengers, and so the prediction in both respects will be fulfilled. The pilot had quitted his post, the ship was left to run at random, they knew not what latitude they were in, much less how to steer their course, and yet Providence undertakes to bring them to an island that shall be a refuge for them. When the Church of God, like this ship, is tossed with tempests, and not comforted, when there is none to guide her of all her sons, yet God can bring her safely to shore, and will do it. Their coming at length to an anchor upon an unknown shore. They had been a full fortnight in the storm, continually expecting death, the 14th night, and not sooner, they came near land. They were that night driven up and down in Adria, not in the Adriatic Gulf on which Venice stands, but in the Adriatic Sea, a part of the Mediterranean, containing both the Sicilian and Ionian seas, and extending to the African shore. In this sea they were tossed, and knew not whereabouts they were. About midnight the mariners apprehended that they drew near to some shore, which confirmed what Paul had told them, that they must be driven upon some island. To try whether it was so or no, they sounded, in order to their finding the depth of the water, for the water would be shallower as they drew nearer to shore. By the first experiment they found they drew 20 fathoms deep of water, and by the next 15 fathoms, which was a demonstration that they were near some shore. God has wisely ordered such a natural notice to sailors in the dark, that they may be cautious. They took the hint, and, fearing rocks near the shore, they cast anchor, and wished for the day. They durst not go forward for fear of rocks, and yet would not go back in hope of shelter, but they would wait for the morning, and heartily wished for it. Who can blame them when the affair came to a crisis? When they had light, there was no land to be seen. Now that there was land near them, they had no light to see it by. No marvel then they wished for day. When those that fear God walk in darkness, and have no light, yet let them not say, the Lord has forsaken us, or, our God has forgotten us, but let them do as these mariners did, cast anchor, and wish for the day, and be assured that the day will dawn. Hope is an anchor of the soul, sure and steadfast, entering into that within the veil. Hold fast by that, think not of putting to sea again, but abide by Christ, and wait till the day break, and the shadows flee away. The defeating of the sailors' attempt to quit the ship, here was a new danger added to their distress, which they narrowly escaped. Observe, 1. The treacherous design of the seamen, and that was to leave the sinking ship, which, though a piece of wisdom in others, yet in those that were entrusted with the care of it was the basest fraud that could be. v. 30. They were about to flee out of the ship, concluding no other than that when it ran ashore it must be broken all to pieces. Having the command of the boat, the project was to get all of them into that, and so save themselves, and leave all the rest to perish. To cover this vile design, they pretended they would cast anchors out of the foreship, or carry them further off, and in order to this they let down the boat, which they had taken in, v. 16, 17, and were going into it, having agreed among themselves, when they were in to make straight for the shore. The treacherous seamen are like the treacherous shepherd, who flees when he sees the danger coming, and there is most need of his help. Jn 10:12. Thus true is that of Solomon, Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth or a foot out of joint. Let us therefore cease from man. Paul had, in God's name, assured them that they should come safely to land, but they will rather trust their own refuge of lies than God's word and truth. Paul's discovery of it, and protestation against it, v. 31. They all saw them preparing to go into the boat, but were deceived by the pretense they made. Only Paul saw through it, and gave notice to the centurion and the soldiers concerning it, and told them plainly, except these abide in the ship, you cannot be saved. The skill of a mariner is seen in a storm, and, in the distress of the ship, then is the proper time for him to exert himself. Now the greatest difficulty of all was before them, and therefore the seamen were now more necessary than ever yet. It was indeed not by any skill of theirs that they were brought to land, for it was quite beyond their skill, but, now that they are near land, they must use their art to bring the ship to it. When God has done that for us which we could not, we must then in His strength help ourselves. Paul speaks humanly, when he says, you cannot be saved except these abide in the ship, and he does not at all weaken the assurances he had divinely given that they should infallibly be saved. God, who appointed the end, that they should be saved, appointed the means, that they should be saved by the help of these seamen, though, if they had gone off, no doubt God would have made His word good some other way. Paul speaks as a prudent man, not as a prophet, when he says, these are necessary to your preservation. Duty is ours, events are God's, and we do not trust God, but tempt Him, when we say, we put ourselves under His protection, and do not use proper means, such as are within our power, for our own preservation. 3. The effectual defeat of it by the soldiers, v. 32. It was not time to stand arguing the case with the seamen, and therefore they made no more ado, but cut the ropes of the boat, and though it might otherwise have done them service in their present distress, they chose rather to let it fall off, and lose it, than suffer it to do them this disservice. And now the seamen, being forced to stay in the ship whether they would or no, are forced likewise to work for the safety of the ship as hard as they could, because if the rest perish they must perish with them. The new life which Paul put into the company, by cheerfully inviting them to take some refreshment, and by the repeated assurances he gave them that they should all of them have their lives given them for a prey. Happy they who had such a one as Paul in their company, who not only had correspondence with heaven, but was of a hearty lively spirit with those about him, that sharpened the countenance of his friend, as iron sharpens iron. Such a friend in distress, when without our fightings and within our fears, is a friend indeed. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Such was Paul's here to his companions in tribulation. The day was coming on, those that wish for the day, let them wait a while, and they shall have what they wish for. The dawning of the day revived them a little, and then Paul got them together. He chid them for their neglect of themselves, that they had so far given way to fear and despair as to forget or not to mind their food. This is the 14th day that you have tarried, and continued fasting, having taken nothing, and that is not well. v. 33. Not that they had all, or any of them, continued 14 days without any food, but they had not had any set meal, as they used to have, all that time. They ate very little, next to nothing. Or, you have continued fasting, that is, you have lost your stomach, you have had no appetite at all to your food, nor any relish of it, through prevailing fear and despair. A very disconsolate state is thus expressed. PS 102:4, I forget to eat my bread. It is a sin to starve the body, and to deny it its necessary supports. He is an unnatural man indeed that hateth his own flesh, and does not nourish and cherish it, and it is a sore evil under the sun to have a sufficiency of the good things of this life, and not to have power to use them. If this arise from the sorrow of the world, and from any inordinate fear or trouble, it is so far from excusing it that it is another sin, it is discontent, it is distrust of God, it is all wrong. What folly is it to die for fear of dying? But thus the sorrow of the world works death, while joy in God is life and peace in the greatest distresses and dangers.